Last week, Jimmy Anderson retired from Test cricket, ending a remarkable career with 704 wickets and 188 Test matches. To add to this, Anderson finished with the third most wickets in all of Test cricket, that too the most by a pace bowler. But despite all these stats, still the most impressive thing about James Anderson is the longevity at which he does these things. Anderson has been playing Test cricket for 21 years and has sent down 40,000 deliveries in that time period. As mentioned prior, last week Anderson received a farewell game at Lords, off into a happy retirement. However, retirement wasn't always something that Jimmy Anderson wanted, because Anderson was sensationally forced into retirement by Brendon McCullum, with an eye to the Ashes in 2025. However, there's been plenty of discussion around this topic, with many believing that Anderson should have been given a few more tests before being forced out. But I personally think there's a couple of sides to this argument, so without further ado, let's delve into it. But before we go any further, please make sure you leave a like and subscribe, so you don't miss any future content. I think there are a lot of different ways that this is a reasonable decision by Brendon McCullum. To start with, in his last 9 Test matches, not including his farewell game, Anderson had only taken 15 wickets in his last 9 Test matches. This also included a horror Ashes 2023, where Anderson only took 5 wickets in 4 Test matches, averaging 85. Looking at the stats, there's a clear sign that Anderson was slowing down. However, I think the main reason why McCullum forced Anderson into retirement is because of his age and his speed. It's no secret that England are looking towards the future, keeping one eye on the Ashes in 2025. By the time the 2025 Ashes rolls around, Anderson will be aged 43 or close to. His pace isn't as good as it used to be as well, averaging in the low 130s. To add to this, Anderson's Test record in Australia isn't magnificent, averaging 34 rather than 26 in all other countries. This all makes for a pretty compelling case. However, there's also the other side to it, where you can still make a pretty good case for Anderson not retiring. For starters, England hasn't even recovered from Stuart Broad's retirement last year in the Ashes. Due to a jam-packed schedule, and their next Test series being in India, where they were required to pick 3 spinners, as a result, England have still not filled the hole of Stuart Broad, and they've put the hole of Jimmy Anderson also into that. It leaves them with a really inexperienced attack, with Shoaib Bashir also being a newbie to Test cricket. I think it would have been good for England if Anderson could have anchored the Test team a little bit more, but with Anderson gone, Chris Woakes is now the leader of the attack. Now this comes as a bit of a surprise to me. We mentioned prior that Anderson's lack of speed and age was one of the reasons why he was dropped. Woakes himself will be 37 by the time the next Ashes rolls around, which for a fast bowler is extremely tough to be bowling at that age. And if Jimmy Anderson's pace is your problem, then Chris Woakes was actually bowling slower than James Anderson during the first Test on average. And if we're talking about records in Australia, Chris Woakes averages 50 in Australia, which any top-order batsman would be proud of. Although to be fair, Chris Woakes did get Player of the Series in last year's Ashes, and is a more than handy batsman with the bat. I believe Woakes is one of the most underrated cricketers in the world, in England. And there's also a possibility that Chris Woakes is the man who's playing that anchor role for the rest of the bowling attack. But lastly, what's my opinion on this? Well, personally, I think that James Anderson probably should have played on for the rest of the summer, or at least up until the Old Trafford Test. I think shoving Anderson out has been something that's been coming for a long time. However, I do think it's a respectable enough decision by Brendon McCullum to give themselves as much time to prepare for the 2025 Ashes. But that's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. And if you're new here, leave a comment down below.